Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Good Monday to you. It's a victory Monday, a big victory Monday, as both the Cleveland Browns and the Ohio State Buckeyes win this weekend. The Buckeyes sneaking past Rutgers, barely 45 points ahead of them, I guess, and the Browns eking out a win in the frozen tundra of Minnesota cold, although it's a covered stadium, of course. Nevertheless, the Vikings are always tough going for the Browns. And so it's Victory Monday. I'm very happy. And some of you are thinking to yourselves, why is he happy? The Democrats are going to pass a $2.5 trillion bill. Look, I know it. I know that there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth among Democrats this weekend over the fact that they could not get done what they wanted to get done last week, which was spend $3.5 trillion of money that we don't have, just printing it. And I understand that the Democrats and the liberal Democrats are fighting each other. That's all fine. What matters to me is that AOC came out and spoke this weekend, which means I really don't have to work today. All I have to do is play the AOC tape. So let me do the rundown first from the Wall Street Journal. Democrats weigh cutting programs or reducing scope to trim $3.5 trillion bill. That's how the Journal sees the discussions that are underway, but not the New York Times. The New York Times says progressives stand firm on priorities as infrastructure debate continues. So in the Journal, they're compromising, and in the New York Times, they're holding their positions. The Wall Street Journal editorializes the humiliation of the House moderates. There are no House Democratic moderates, but referring to Josh Gottheimer and others who got an ironclad commitment from Nancy Pelosi to have a vote on the infrastructure bill, she lied to them, and they are humiliated, but it doesn't matter. Here's the key headline for you, America. Just went up at the Wall Street Journal 13 minutes ago. Broader inflation pressures begin to show. While many pandemic-driven price pressures are easing, broader sources of higher inflation are replacing them. That is the message from a slew of alternative inflation measures that strip away price changes due to idiosyncratic swings in supply and demand and hone in on longer-lasting pressures. These alternative indexes are signaling inflation is not as extreme as what our traditional core shows, 7.5, but it is picking up, said Sarah House, director and senior economist at Wells Fargo. Quote, all these measures have moved from signaling price stability to signaling sharp accelerations in underlying inflation, said Brent Meyer, an economist at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta. Now, I'm hoping Brent comes to the Atlanta History Center on October 13th, because Brian Westbury and I and Alfredo Ortiz of Job Creator Network will be at the Atlanta History Center, along with Herschel, on October 13th to explain the Biden inflation. I'm bringing America's economist, Brian Westbury, Alfredo Ortiz of the Job Creator Network, and Herschel to explain to people what's going on. And what's going on, I love Brian Westbury lecturing on inflation. People walk away and they begin to change their lives to accommodate the coming impact. And the coming impact is not going to be pretty. So the Atlanta Fed has figured it out, so they can come to the Atlanta History Center on October 13th. It's a ticketed event, though, Brent Meyer. You've got to go to am920theanswer.com to buy your ticket. From a different Wall Street Journal story on the cost of housing, mortgage payments are getting more and more unaffordable. The Atlanta Fed, this is a quote, the Atlanta Fed calculates affordability using a 3-month average of median home prices from CoreLogic and median household incomes based on census data. In July, the latest month in the Atlanta Fed's calculation, median home prices were $342,350. $342,350. That's up 23% over a year. So the median home price in the United States went up 23% in 1 year. That's inflation. Brian Westbury and I will be talking about what this does to the American dream and why the Democratic plan is insane on October 13th. And I would love for you to come out and join us in that and to meet Herschel Walker, who I'm I'm not involved in the primary. There are a lot of people, but I think Herschel is going to be the nominee for Senate against Senator Warnock in an epic battle. And your first opportunity to talk and meet with Herschel is October the 13th. Tickets at am920theanswer.com at the Atlanta History Center. Big story in a bunch of newspapers, the Pandora Papers. Now, I'm not quite sure why the Pandora Papers are as big a deal as people are making them out to be. Massive data leak exposes hidden wealth of world leaders. If you didn't know that world leaders were very wealthy, Putin, King Abdullah. Now, admittedly, Tony and Sherry Blair are in these papers, and they just put an office building into an offshore account legally, and they saved £312,000 in stamp duty by using an offshore firm, but they'll have to pay capital gains taxes on it when they sell it. Jordan's king has 14 luxury homes in the U.S. and the U.K., which is not surprising. He is, after all, a king. And there are many Russians who have got lots of money. So they've got 14, someone leaked the financial planning documents and the trust documents from 14 different international offshore firms that move money around for the world's multi-hundred millionaire people and billionaires. And not surprisingly, a lot of it is in real estate in the United States and in London. Why? Because we have rule of law and we protect people's property. And so I'm not sure why they spent all this time on it. Nobody's going to read it. I'm telling you, there are too many stories, too much data, and the same thing that happens with the Panama Papers happens. The brain shuts down. And they say, please take me to a story I understand. I do not understand offshore trusts. And I do understand that wealthy people hide their money from the tax man. What are you telling me? But this is a story about wealthy people hiding their assets from the tax man. In the political spotlight, we have articles in both the New York Times and in the Wall Street Journal and in the Washington Post on the Supreme Court returning today. Robert Barnes is a fine reporter on the Supreme Court in the Washington Post. In political spotlight, Supreme Court embarks on an extraordinarily controversial term. This is the term in which Roe v. Wade will be overturned, I believe. The term in which affirmative action will be finally and irrevocably declared unconstitutional. It's going to be a good term. But we're going to need lawyers to defend religious freedom in it. Over at the top of HughHewitt.com, you're going to see a banner for Alliance Defending Freedom. They're going to be back at the Supreme Court this year, the lawyers from Alliance Defending Freedom, in two critical cases. We need your support to make sure all the briefs get written, all the lawyers stay employed, all the expenses get paid for the plaintiffs who are represented for free by Alliance Defending Freedom. We need you in Shart to go over to HughHewitt.com and saddle up. $5, $50, $100, $500. This organization defends you. Like they defended Tanner Cross, a teacher in Virginia, who was suspended for exercising his free speech rights before the school board. Here's Fox News turning his case, represented by Alliance Defending Freedom, into a national headline.
And he has now officially been reinstated at that Leesburg school where he teaches. The Alliance Defending Freedom tells Fox News this is a huge victory for both freedom of speech and religious liberty.
Teachers do have constitutional rights. No teacher, no parent, no citizen should be punished by the government for exercising that freedom.
The ADF tells us this case might go all the way to the Supreme Court to protect educators.
The ADF never blinks. If it means the Supreme Court, they go to the Supreme Court. Please support it today. You can call 866-359-9644. That's 866-359-9644. But I prefer that you go directly to HughHewitt.com and just be as generous as you can, because this is going to be a big term at the Supreme Court. Major oil spill off my beach where I run. It saddens me. 126 gallons of oil in the Pacific washing up in Huntington Beach. I'll keep you posted on that as the week ahead. The boons are out. Military bases turn into small cities as Afghans wait months for homes in the United States. 53,000 evacuees in the United States, another 20,000 coming. Big story on paydays for U.S. college athletes in the Financial Times. If you are one of those said athletes, you ought to go and read that because it's comprehensive. And when I come back, I'm going to tell you about the deadliest ultramarathon in history, which, guess who ran it? China. No surprise here. Don't run in races run by the CCP or anywhere in China. 27 out of 140 ended up dead. Yeah, 21 out of 172 runners ended up dead. I'll tell you about it after the break on the Monday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Now. The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Pandering, overweight snowflake. What has race got to do with the last election and angry voters? Nothing. But you want to virtue signal to your political masters. If it's possible, let's ignore for a second that you have admitted you called the Chinese equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that you haven't denied that you gave him a heads up totally illegally because you have no role in the chain of command, and say, don't worry. If that crazy guy, the president, if President Trump is going to declare war with China, I'll give you a heads up. I'm on your side, you commies. I'm a commie too. Is that why in 2015 in combat at a NATO summit, you can see the video right there. He says, China, not our enemy. Really? Because China thinks America is her enemy? Why would you say that? And why do you think it's your duty to be communist China's man inside the Pentagon? Let's put that all to one side. Your love of bigoted propaganda like critical race theory created by Derek Hall, Biden's mentor at Harvard, which states, the textbooks state, if you are white, you are racist. You may not know it, but you're racist, which itself is a statement of bigotry.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Women are born ignorant of male sexual nature. It's not their fault. We're so different from women. There's no fault here, but it is the fault of a society that doesn't teach them that. And society always did, but not since the 60s, because they wanted to believe men and women are basically the same. So I'm curious, are you a religious home?
Yes, we are religious.
Right. So here's my theory. Religious Americans are less naive than secular Americans.
I like that theory.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens or captives, we...
Graduate School of Public Policy.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. It's Monday. Get going. Great week ahead. Beautiful fall week in most of the United States, and I hope you have a great time enjoying it. I want to bring you a market update from Friday, reminding everyone that this is sponsored by Birch Gold. Lots of you are saying inflation is here, like I told you about. Lots of you are running for the gold, buying the gold. It's at $1,751 an ounce. It's been right around $1,750 for a month. Look, it's not going to stay there, not with the underlying inflation rate going up. Buy your gold from Birch Gold. That's what I do. You can find Birch Gold at hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. They'll send you a free information kit on either buying gold from them or rolling over a portion of your IRA or 401k into a Birch Gold protected and maintained physical deposit of your retirement. Now, you do 5 to 10% of your retirement. You don't do more than that. Diversification is the name of the game. Some real estate, some gold, some stocks, some bonds, some not much cash, not in an age of inflation. The biggest story of the weekend, of course, and of the markets is not what they did on Friday. On Friday, the Dow went up 482 points, and NASDAQ went up 118, and the S&P went up 50. So it was a good day on the markets. The biggest story is that the Democrats deadlocked, and when they come back, but the leftists are not giving up. Here's AOC on MSNBC, cut number 5. Here's what she wants to do.
Yeah, and I think the opposite is fair as well, right? In that you have the frustrations, perhaps on the left, that you have conservatives in the Senate that are blocking things like universal pre-K or free community college or expanding Medicare. But the same very much applies to these conservatives in the Senate. They are sending off, these very angry statements, but they could have elected more conservatives to the House of Representatives. But right now we have a caucus of 95 people who are holding strong because, frankly, the House of Representatives, it is not the undemocratic or as undemocratic of a body as the United States Senate is. Yeah. And so as a result, it tends, and because our elections are every 2 years, it reflects the present moment of this country a little bit more quickly, I would say. And responsibly.
Responsibly. This is a representative who does not know anything about bicameralism or the theory behind the Senate and the House or the theory behind a 6-year term and a 2-year term. But I would expect nothing less from AOC than not to mention the Constitution at all. John Bresnahan, who is one of the founders of Punchbowl, the real explanation for why the Democrats are deadlocked, cut number 4.
It's incredibly toxic right now. I had a chief of staff for a moderate, the House Democrat say, the White House Legislative Affairs operation is just, they don't know what they're doing. So there's a big problem there. There's a lot of big problems.
They don't know what they're doing. Joe Biden doesn't know what he's doing. Do you think the Afghans don't know that? Do you think they are a little bit worried about that? Jonathan Swan of HBO sat down with Ambassador Roz from Afghanistan, who I've had the honor of meeting. She is the last ambassador from the Republic of Afghanistan to the United States. And she's alone in her embassy with a skeleton staff cut off, and the Department of State is doing nothing with her. Here's Jonathan Swan talking to her on Axios last night, cut 18.
President Biden comes into office and he decides not to renegotiate with the Taliban. How did you feel when he made that decision?
Look, when he first came to office, we were all super excited that he won't withdraw or he will change the deal. And I even reached out to some of my principals and I said, we should not really buy into this la-la land. We should really be serious because
he said he was going to withdraw.
Exactly. I think everybody hoped that he will put stronger conditions.
Which he didn't.
Which he did not.
Actually, he didn't honor the conditions that had been put in place. The Nixon seminar will be talking about the Afghan withdrawal tomorrow night. It's chaired by Michael Pompeo and Robert O'Brien. They will explain that the Doha agreement with the Taliban had conditions that were breached in March when they attacked forward operating base Chapman, that they being the Taliban. Biden should have struck back hard then and put it aside. He did not. He did not. And as a result, Afghanistan is a Taliban and al-Qaeda base today. I'll be right back after the break, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Instantaneous, momentary pleasure is a value the left understands that keeps their entire coalition together. And Fauci understood this. Fauci understood the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. He understood the narrative that you do not cross that line. Now, we see this happen all the time, but we don't always talk about it. We don't always, those of us that are conservatives and actually love the country, we don't actually analyze the place that certain activist groups and ideas have over the other. Who gets the final say when there's a clash, when there's a conflict, when there's a collision? Another example would be, so the other side cares deeply about the Me Too movement unless it threatens Joe Biden becoming president. So Me Too matters a lot unless it gets in the way of controlling the White House. Power, the control of the federal government, then matters more than some sort of virtuous, righteous campaign to listen and to believe all women. Currently, there is an epic clash that the media is totally ignoring. Now, they are covering it here and there, but there is a clash between two of the favorite teams that have been created, fostered, supported, and aided over the last 18 months. You have on one side Team BLM. BLM Incorporated, racial justice, skin color matters. Now, as all of you know, after last summer of Floydapalooza, that group gets whatever they want.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly,
burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, thank you for watching or listening today. Of course, if you are watching on YouTube, good morning to you. People say, why do you always wear a blue shirt? I always wear a blue shirt that's buttoned down in every media appearance I've done since the first one on the air in 1989, for the simple reason I don't have to think about it. And so there you have it. The uniform is on this morning if you're watching on YouTube. My interview with Dr. Fauci from Wednesday of last week has got 630,000 views on YouTube, and that's only a portion of it. Because Dr. Fauci, I asked him some tough questions, unlike most media that sit down with him. I follow it, and I like Dr. Fauci. I always have liked Dr. Fauci. I know some of you despise him, but I like him. I just think it's time for him to step down, that he's doing more harm than good because people just automatically reject what he said. I think maybe the blowback from that interview was so intense that he felt obliged on Sunday to say even crazier stuff to prove that he's not in any way intimidated by criticism. I wasn't criticizing him. I was just pointing out he's been wrong so much, and the FDA and the CDC has been wrong so much that we need a fresh start, or we're going to get caught in another health crisis with no one believing anybody. But anyway, Dr. Fauci went on, Face the Nation, for whatever reason. Good, bad, or indifferent, here is what he said, cut number 16.
But we can gather for Christmas, or it's just too soon to tell?
You know, Margaret, it's just too soon to tell.
Actually, it's not too soon to tell. We are going to gather for Christmas. I don't know if the good doctor has not been paying attention, but every NFL stadium is filled. I was in Charleston over the weekend for a promotion ceremony. And Charleston is jammed to the gills with people. I mean, tens of thousands of people. We went out to Fort Sumter, where I'd never been before. It's really quite an amazing trip. They raised the flag. They tell the story of Fort Sumter. They tell the story of the Union. Major general who left lowered the flag as a major and returned as a major general to raise it 4 years later as the Union defeated the Confederacy. Ended the enslavement of Americans. It's a great trip. The boat was packed. So Americans aren't listening to Dr. Fauci anymore. His credibility is shot. Now, I think when you take a poll, people will say, I like the guy, nice 80-year-old guy, but I'm not listening anymore. I hope he comes back. If you haven't yet listened to my interview from Wednesday, it's a lot more profitable than any of his appearances on the Sunday shows. It's also had more views and more listens than the Sunday shows because the questions are actually difficult. I want to go back, however, well, two things. One, if you're in Atlanta and you're driving to work, we're going to run out of tickets at am920theanswer.com, and you're going to blame me. The Atlanta History Center event on inflation in America with Herschel Walker, Brian Westbury, Alfredo Ortiz, and me We are having that at the Atlanta History Center on October the 13th. It's a ticketed event. You just cannot show up to talk about the Biden inflation and hear about the Biden inflation and find out what you ought to do with your money and find out what Brian Westbury thinks and why Herschel is running. Herschel should have played for Ohio State. Then he would be, he'd be the king of the world. But he played for Georgia, which is doing pretty well. Ohio State's up to 7 in the AP poll. They'll make it to the Final Four. It's going to be Georgia, Alabama, Ohio, and Cincinnati, I think, in the Final Four. But you can come out on October the 13th, the Atlanta History Center. Get your ticket early at am920theanswer.com. I want to go back to Jonathan Swan. I mentioned to you, I have met Ambassador Roz. That is the Afghanistan ambassador to the United States. She's an amazing woman, formerly the Afghanistan ambassador to the UN, utterly abandoned by the United States. Nobody calls her from the State Department. Nobody calls her from the Pentagon. She represents the free people of Afghanistan, the refugees that have fled to this country. Here is her conversation with two cuts from the Jonathan Swan interview with the HBO. Jonathan's a great reporter. Cut number 18.
President Biden comes into office and he decides not to renegotiate with the Taliban. How did you feel when he made that decision?
Look, when he first came to office, we were all super excited that he won't withdraw or he will change the deal. And I even reached out to some of my principals and I said, we should not really buy into this la-la land. We should really be serious because
he said he was going to withdraw.
Exactly. I think everybody hoped that he will put stronger conditions.
Which he didn't.
Which he did not. It was very well accepted to me and to a lot of us. We said, the U.S. troops will withdraw. But there has to be conditions on Taliban that they commit to the achievements that the Afghan society has made.
Did you get the sense that President Biden cared about the fate of Afghan women?
I don't think so. He said the U.S. could not be the police of the world to protect women in any other country.
I've got a quote that he said, which I want to get your reaction to. So this is when President Biden gave his speech marking the final withdrawal of the U.S. troops. I'll just read you, quote, "We'll continue to speak out for basic rights of the Afghan people, especially women and girls. I've been clear that human rights will be the center of our foreign policy. But the way we do that is not through endless military deployments, but through diplomacy, economic tools, and rallying the rest of the world for support."
What type of tools are left right now to pressure Taliban? That they respect the human rights.
There aren't any. Jonathan Swan on Axios. President Biden abandoned the Afghan women and girls. Don't ever talk to me about... We're going to get a lot of conversation about reproductive rights and the rights of women and girls from President Biden as the Supreme Court nears overturning Roe v. Wade and returning the issue to the states. Just remember, he didn't care that darkness descended on half the population of Afghanistan. One more cut from Jonathan Swan with Afghanistan Ambassador Adela Roz, cut number 19.
Do you still believe in the United States? Do you still trust the United States?
No. Sorry. I trust and believe the people. I mean, I've lost some trust in the U.S. policies, and I think probably government policies, including my own leadership in government policies. And I'm reflecting and saying how effective I was, and I think it is a big question that I don't have the right type of answer.
Do you still think of America as the leader of the free world?
If you talk about democracy, I probably will question it and laugh at it, because...
Why do you say that?
Because you were engaged in building one in Afghanistan, and the people believed in it. They fought for it. But when the negotiations arrived with Taliban, that was not a priority to be negotiated.
Do you think Afghans will ever trust an American president again?
Not soon, probably. I'm sorry to say that. I don't think so.
Axios, AM. Joe Biden deserting even after the Taliban breached the Doha Agreement, which was to have seen a comprehensive peace settlement that would have divided the country probably into spheres of influence. Joe Biden did nothing. Afghanistan is in darkness now. Meanwhile, up on the Hill, the left wing is charging. AOC on MSNBC yesterday, cut number 6.
Well, I do math. And 95, which is the number of House Democrats or House progressives, is larger than 9, which is the number of Democrats who signed on to a letter threatening to sink the entire reconciliation bill back in August, demanding this vote this week for an arbitrary reason. Even the president wasn't demanding a vote this week. And so, I would wish that some of our folks were coming to the table the way that we are, but, also tensions get high in legislating and negotiating. It's a natural part of the process, and I wish him well.
Another conservative Democrat who won't come to the table very explicitly, Senator Sinema of Arizona, is also out with a statement attacking your side for betraying the American people, engaging in stunts, she says. Arizona Democrats are upset with her, threatening her with a vote of no confidence. As someone who famously came to office having primaried an out-of-touch conservative Democrat from the left, should Sinema now be worried about a primary challenge come 2024? Do you think that needs to be talked about more as a way of reminding her that the pressure is on in an increasingly bluish state, Arizona?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think ultimately that is always up to the folks right there in the state of Arizona. Are they happy with their leadership? Their most recent senator that they had just elected is more progressive, fights very hard for working families. But that is ultimately up to the people of Arizona. It is a state that is increasingly Latino and Latina. It is a state where indigenous people really just showed up and organized in incredible, remarkable ways for the presidential election. It is a place where working class populist politics is really taking off. And I think that, if you're home in Arizona, it's a question that you may want to raise.
I wish he had asked her, which indigenous people are you talking about? Do you think she knows which tribes are there? Really? 50-50? I don't think so. AOC then went on with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. Cut number 7.
Well, the agreement several months ago to even proceed on that one bipartisan bill was that it was tied with our larger Build Back Better agenda. And the reason when some folks say, well, why can't you just pass this and we'll see everything else later? First of all, we do not, both of these bills need to pass. Both will not pass if people try to separate them. If we try to diverge from that agreement that was settled several months ago. We can't simply invent new terms midstream and then expect everyone else those initial terms to hold. I'm willing to hold up my end of the bargain by sticking to both, and we need to expect all of our lawmakers who are part of that deal to stick to that bargain.
See, she's conveniently forgetting that the Republicans in the Senate that voted for the infrastructure bill explicitly rejected the merging of the bill. Unilateral imposition of rules doesn't work in a bicameral legislature. I don't think she gets that. More AOC, cut number 8.
I think some of the climate provisions that we have, we cannot afford to increase carbon or just fossil fuel emissions at this time. That is simply the science. That is not something we can kick down the line. Right now, both the IPCC report saying that this is code red for humanity, as well as recent reporting saying that if you're under 40, like myself, like millions of Americans, you will be seeing a catastrophic increase in the
You're
amount.
going to run right into Senator Joe Manchin on those issues, though. You know that.
Yes, and I think Senator Manchin's going to run into the science as well.
I think AOC is going to run someday into someone who asks her tough questions. Someday they're going to ask her some tough questions about even climate change, which is what do we do about the CCP, which is the largest emitter in the world and doesn't believe in treaties. But in the meantime, I'm going to run into Relief Factor, which is, of course, the first hour of the day. I'm holding it up if you're watching on YouTube, on Rumble, wherever. There you hear it. If you're not, it is time to get back out on the highways and byways. You go to Charleston, you gain weight. You just sit around and eat, and that's what people do in Charleston. I have my lukewarm coffee. One of my dear friends, Beth, sent me a coffee warmer, which I haven't set up yet, but normally I have my lukewarm coffee at this hour. I take my Carrion Curcumin Resveratrol Omega. And I feel good. I need to send some to Baker Mayfield. Wasn't as sharp as he usually is yesterday. I'm not at all worried. He's our guy. Pay the man. Get him signed up. He just needs a little relief factor for that right shoulder, which got dislocated. I'm telling you right now, Icarian curcumin, resveratrol, omega, put it together. It makes the best combination of anti-inflammatory natural ingredients out there. Give it a shot. $19.95 is a 3-week starter pack of relieffactor.com. Come right back. Salena Zito, the one, the only, gets the Yinzer report in. Poor Steelers. Not really. Sad, not sad. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
But the first lie that we were told, the first lie that we know now, no one told Biden to keep troops in Afghanistan. That's what Biden said. Did you guys, by the way, hear the chants when Biden went to the congressional baseball game? I don't want to go all over the place here, but that's our commander-in-chief. He didn't get a great reception. But no one told Biden to keep the troops in Afghanistan. That's huge, right? That's absolutely huge. Biden completely lied about it. The guy's a habitual liar. The first lie the senators exposed was Biden telling ABC News' George Stephanopoulos back in August that no one advised him to keep 2,500 American troops in Afghanistan. And we know now every single one of them did, from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, regardless of how you feel about them and how I feel about them. Milley, the same is true with U.S. Central Command Commander General Frank McKenzie. So they all admitted that they had agreed with the recommendation to keep at least that many troops, and that they were heard by Biden and basically ignored by Biden. McKenzie admitted, I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and that he was confident Biden heard all of his recommendations. So the question is, did Biden forget? Did Biden just ignore? You know, sometimes I go back and forth. I'm like, okay, with this guy Biden in the White House, how is he completely off of his rocker? Is he just unable or incapable of remembering anything past a couple hours or so?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
There are people today who seem emboldened in wielding naked power, in lying. They don't seem to have the code. They don't believe in virtue. They believe in power, and they seem less troubled. The journalistic class, the medical establishment, they seem to have come unmoored.
We're not alone. We have history to guide us, and it has been a trademark across time and space that the left feels that the means that you talked about are justified by their more noble ends, nobility defined as radical equality of result. And so they feel that what you call lying, the Russian collusion hoax, or Joe Biden, that son Hunter's laptop is Russian disinformation, have as superior moral beings to use. They don't call it lying, they call it a noble lie. When Anthony Fauci says on one day, don't wear a mask, then wear a mask, then wear two masks, or it's xenophobic to have a travel ban, yes, and then maybe not. He said himself that he lied about masks so there wouldn't be a quote unquote run on mask. And they've been doing that with everything. If you said, why did James Clapper lie under oath and say this NSA does not spy on people?
Keep up with what.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening. Salena Zito with the Yinzer Report. You can read Salena in the Washington Examiner. You can read her in the New York Post. You can read everything she writes at salenazito.com. And I love her column about the Colts of Cedar. What do we call Cedar? Cedar Village? Is that what it is?
Cedar. Now you're going to make me forget.
Yeah, that's what I did. It's Cumberland County's Cedar Cliff Colts. I love this column. Tell us what the Cedar Cliff Colts Booster Club did and how it was received.
Well, a lot of these booster clubs are what support, in particular in football, those are what support the team. It helps them get the new equipment, new jerseys, things of that nature, things that keep them safe. And they're usually charged with, raising X amount of money. And they're all volunteer, booster clubs are all volunteer programs, almost all just made up of the parents of the players and or the cheerleaders. And this year has been particularly hard to raise money because, restaurants aren't giving, they're reluctant to give away anything free, which is what they traditionally do, or give away free meals in support of the booster club. The kids will buy a certificate, and then they go around and they try to sell it for a raffle. Well, it's become incredibly impossible for these young people to raise money. So they came up with the idea of having a raffle, and there's 10 different items on the raffle. Of those 10, 5 of them are a variety of different kinds of guns. Now, in Dauphin or in Cumberland counties, because this school district covers both, owning a gun is as common as owning a car or a truck.
Right. This is hunting country. This is hunting country.
Hunting and target shooting.
Yeah.
And so, they decided to have a raffle, and guns were part of it. Now, if you won a gun and you didn't want it, you got $200 instead. But there was one parent who took exception to this role and took it to the school district. And the school district, in its great wisdom, said, hey, I understand your feelings. However, we have no jurisdiction over this.
The boosters I was a booster parent on the booster board for 6 years. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt did it for 2 years. Boosters have nothing to do with school boards.
Right. But I will concede that this doesn't always happen. There are a lot of school districts under this kind of type of pressure that would cave and try to stop it. Even though they have nothing to do with it, we are in an era where we cave to the slightest wind blowing.
Yeah, one woke parent usually can turn a school board on its head because they're afraid of the woke parents. But this was one woke parent, and they just blew her off, eh? Well, they listened to her.
Yeah, and they were very diplomatic in their reasoning, but they said, "I'm sorry, we have nothing to do with this." And the thing that is remarkable that happened is that nothing happened. Parents did not. There was no uproar. There was no, wave on social media. I will say though that the lieutenant governor's wife, Mrs. Fetterman, and her son both encouraged people in the past couple days to not buy a raffle ticket. That also got no traction whatsoever.
I hope the people of Cedar Cliff remember that the crazy left-wing lieutenant governor tried to cripple their boosters.
Yeah, I think they will remember that.
It's nuts. The booster clubs are the backbone of American athletics at the high school level. This booster club needs to rate about $50,000, according to your column. That's typical of what we had to do. Some run races, some sell gift cards, some sell gift wrap. So these people raffled guns. It's nobody's business, and a woke parent doesn't get to veto it.
Right, exactly. And this parent made it appear as though selling a raffle ticket equated to kids buying guns and having access to guns. And it was just really out of proportion. And I thought that the booster parents handled it well. What's been really fascinating is I went onto their Facebook page, the Booster Club's Facebook page, and they are just overwhelmed with support within the community. And those are the kinds of things we don't hear about. What we hear about are instances where schools or the booster clubs would collapse under the pressure. Instead, It's been the exact opposite, and that's heartening in an era where everyone is always sort of falling to the one voice that can take an entire program down.
Yeah, but now that you've written about it, Salena, expect that the left is going to send their emissaries of repression and thought police. But the Alliance Defending Freedom will be there to defend the school district, I'm sure, and the Booster Club. And Salena Zito's column at the Washington Examiner, everything Salena at salenazito.com. And if you want to support the Alliance Defending Freedom, head over to hughhewitt.com. They're involved all across the country, supporting your First Amendment rights, your religious liberty rights, supporting you. Stay tuned, Hour 2, coming up on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Mark Milley admitted yesterday that for that pathetic pseudo-journalist Bob Woodward, for his new blockbuster dishing book of scandal, Mark Milley gave him hours of interviews. Hours? Sorry. How busy should the chairman of the Joint Chiefs be? Just curious. Is the Taliban ready to take back Afghanistan? These are interviews he gave this stinking year. This year. Is the Taliban is rising? Is China is building its military? Is Iran is threatening us? Is Russia is being ever more militaristic? You're sitting down for hours with an avowed, rabid Democrat, quote-unquote, journalist to give inside scoops on how you stood up to President Trump by undermining the chain of command that you by the Constitution are not a part of? What the hell are you doing? Maybe those hours could have been spent, reading the Long War Journal by our friend Bill Roggio, where he predicted in March that the Taliban would be in control and Kabul would fall. Maybe you would better spend your time reading books like Cynical Theories, reading the works of Chris Rufo about what critical race theory really is and why it's racism and bigotry. But oh no, you had to be a politician.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
When I started teaching, I was only 25. I was only 7 years older than my students. That's not a great span of time for between a man and a young woman, and it is a daily distraction.
That's right. It is. I thank you for your honesty. That is exactly right, and it is not his fault. He's built that way. It's no more his fault than food is a distraction to the hungry. Okay? There is no difference between the two. So I'll tell you an interesting story, really interesting. Many years ago, and I can't find this on the internet, maybe one of you can, and that would be of great help to me. I only remember that he was from a university in Indiana, but I don't remember which university. What did it say, Sean? So a professor did a study and found that one of the two groups, I don't remember the second, of men most likely to divorce were high school teachers. And I think college teachers. In other words, men around a great number of young women divorced at a greater rate than any other men. And I had that professor on with that study. So if you could find that, I could read it to you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I would get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Look around. You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump. This is a guy who so far has had zero accountability. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has had zero accountability. Let's go back to what he said to George Stephanopoulos a few weeks ago, and then we'll take you to the present and yesterday's explosive, dramatic testimony by military commanders over the shameful, unethical, unforgivable lies coming out of the Biden administration and Joe Biden himself. Here he was with George Stephanopoulos a month ago on ABC.
Your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops.
No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships. When he was even confronted by a B, should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having very promiscuous relationships. And Fauci said, well, you have to understand there's some risk to that. He didn't denounce it because he understood that if he came out against promiscuous behavior for young people, there'd be a revolution.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway on this Monday. Joined as I am most Mondays by Jake Sherman, co-founder of punchbowlnews.com. If you're not getting Punchbowl News in your mailbox every morning, you're simply missing out on it. Two big scoops in this morning's Punchbowl News. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
I'm good, Hugh. How are you?
Good work on this stuff, on the reconciliation. But I'm going to start actually with the Chamber. It's been 53 weeks since the Chamber of Commerce fired Scott Reed, their longtime GOP consultant who guided the Chamber's politics. It fell off of a political cliff. Supported Democrats are largely responsible for the House majority. The Chamber of Commerce turning its back on Americans' Main Street businesses. And it's been ejected from the GOP negotiations, or so Punchbowl News reported today. That warms my heart, Jake. Thank you for that bit of news.
Yeah, so the Chamber of Commerce had, as you noted, decided about, I would say, a year ago or so to become cozier with Democrats. Long time, as we said in Punchbowl News this morning, there was a period of time, Hugh, which you referred to, where you could not imagine a Republican coalition in D.C. without the Chamber of Commerce. Tom Donahue, the longtime head of the Chamber of Commerce, as much of a player in Republican politics as anybody in Washington. But they've cozied up to Democrats, and they supported a lot of Democratic priorities and things of that nature. And now Republicans want nothing to do with them. Kicked them off of their strategy calls on reconciliation. And I would say there's been a little bit of tension between the leadership and the Chamber when it comes to infrastructure. The Chamber has said the infrastructure bill and reconciliation bills are separate. They're not separate. They are the same. They are part of the president's priority, whether you like it or not. That could be up to you or whoever wants to make that call. But a very, very big statement by the House Republican leadership here.
I'm very happy to see it reported because Tom Donahue was in the second year of a 2-year transition at the end of it when they fired Scott Reed. The buzz is, and I don't know Tom Donahue, I don't know his replacement. He handpicked the replacement. He agreed. She did not like Scott Reed, so he agreed to fire her. Then he retired, and she is running this into the ground. It's going to take the state chambers to get her fired because they're not getting back in the room until she is gone and the left wing at the top of the chamber are replaced. Do you hear that from McCarthy and other people? They're not getting back in until they make changes.
Well, I imagine, I could tell you definitively that Mitch McConnell is pretty sick of him. Is pretty sick of the chamber, not him specifically. And I'm sure Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise want pretty much nothing to do with him. They're just not going to be in the mix. Now, listen, they have a former aide to Eric Cantor who's well-liked in House Republican leadership, Neil Bradley as one of their top people. Jack Howard, who you might know, Hugh, is a longtime chamber figure who's a very big presence on Capitol Hill and somebody who's respected on both sides of the aisle. But just the institution has become a little bit toxic in recent years with its closer relationship with Democrats.
They can hire everyone they want until they replace the CEO and the C-suite. They're not getting back in. Let's go to the other big scoop that you got via some source on the Senate parliamentarians ruling that Mitch McConnell is right. The Democrats can pass a debt level bill on their own, correct?
Correct. They could use the reconciliation process, which they're in the middle of, to spin off another bill that could lift the debt limit with just 50 votes. This is something that we kind of inherently knew, but this is becoming more and more clear right now. It's just a big statement because this is something that McConnell has said. This is something that Democrats have said would be arduous and difficult. But the parliamentarian is pretty much saying it would not be arduous and difficult. It would be relatively simple.
That's what people should go to punchbowlnews.com and get the email. It's very simple. There's no reason for the Democrats not to do it. There's no reason for Janet Yellen to be upset. They can go forward. Let me ask you the more difficult question. I think eventually the left-wing Democrats and the liberal Democrats are going to come together at a number between 1.9 and 3.5 and agree. And Senator Kaine came out. I don't know if you reported this or somebody else reported it. Look, we can make some 10-year programs, 5-year programs. We can make them 3-year programs. We can get to $2.7 trillion or $2.5 trillion. They will meet somewhere in the middle, won't they?
Yeah, that's probably right. I would imagine it would be somewhere. I can't. Let me ask this. I would posit this. I would say it's not going to go below 2. That would be my guess. I think there's a psychic block at going below $2 trillion. I think that, listen, remember the progressive Democrats were at 6 to 10 trillion. They compromised and got down to 3.5 as part of reconciliation in their budget resolution. Manchin won't go for 3.5. He's at 1.5. I think he's toyed with 2. So I think it'll be around 2.
Now, Jake, earlier today I read from the Wall Street Journal, broader inflation pressures begin to show. Brett Meyer, an economist at the Fed, says, quote, all of these measures have moved from signaling price stability to signaling sharp accelerations in underlying inflation. A different Wall Street Journal article, the median home price in the United States went up 23% year to year, July to July. 23%. That's astonishing. If they pass another $2 trillion of printed money or $2.5 trillion of printed money, the 5% inflation is going to go to 7.5 or more.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult, obviously. I think that politically, I think Democrats, here's the thing. When you're in the middle of a big legislative process, you kind of get, a lot of people think fog, right? That you got to get to the end goal. I think there's some element of people not paying attention to outside economic pressures. I think also a lot of Democrats believe that the inflation is temporary and situational, and it's not going to be lingering for much longer. We'll have to see what the reality is.
Jake Sherman, there was a House meeting last week. It looked like you were doing stenography in there. You were breaking stories left and right. The Democrats are upset that some of their friends leak, right? But in fact, everybody leaks in the Democratic caucus.
Everyone leaks in the Democratic caucus and the Republican conference. There's no one keeps their mouth shut. That's good. I don't believe that that our elected officials should be doing things secretly, and I think that the public deserves to know what they're doing. I didn't really care that they came at me. Didn't really make a damn bit of a difference to me. But yes, we get a lot of
all that did was put a big sign over your head, talk to this man. It's a big green arrow over Jake Sherman that talk to this man if you want people to notice it. Your colleague John Brezhnev on CNN yesterday, cut number 4.
It's incredibly toxic right now. I had a chief of staff for a moderate, the House Democrat say, the White House Legislative Affairs operation is just, they don't know what they're doing. So there's a big problem there. There's a lot of big problems.
This cheers my heart too, Jake. That the Biden White House doesn't know what they're doing. How systemic a talent gap is there?
I don't disagree with Brez there, but listen. I think the Legislative Affairs team is actually pretty good and pretty seasoned, but I think that Democrats are struggling clearly. I think that they're facing some of the same pressures Republicans faced in 2011, 2012. And I think that that's something that Nancy Pelosi is having trouble contending with. And that's not, this is a party with two wings that want two very different things. And I think that that's the reality of it.
Okay, let me close by talking to you about Dr. Fauci. He was my guest last week. Did you happen to see that interview?
I did not.
Okay, we talked about why he should resign, and he rejected resigning. And I like Dr. Fauci. I think he's been a great influence, but I think his tenure has reached its effective end. He went on Margaret Brennan yesterday and said, maybe not Christmas. That went over like a lead balloon. Yeah, the NFL stadiums are packed, Jake. At what point do they realize, or do you think they will realize, that Dr. Fauci and the CDC and Rochelle Walensky have lost traction with the American people?
It's a good question. I know Biden likes Fauci and thinks he's
I like Fauci. Everybody likes Fauci.
Right. Listen, I don't have any special insight into that, but I do think that a lot of members think that, and I think there are some Democrats that think that as well.
I like Ben Roethlisberger, but he can't win. It's not a question of liking someone. It's a question of whether or not they can do the job anywhere. Do you think he's effective?
I think that a lot. Personally, I think he's fine. I think a lot of people are sick and tired of him. I don't have any strong feelings about Fauci either way, because my view is just listen to these people and make your own wise decisions. But I think some people have begun to block him out, and I think a lot of people think that's not effective.
That's what I told him. He did not want to hear that. The transcript's over at HughHewitt.com if you want to see it, Jake. He did not want to hear that at all. Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. You should be getting his email every single morning. Punchbowl News AM. It got all sorts of scoops in it this morning. Go over there and sign up at punchbowlnews.com. Come right back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Don't forget, AM920theanswer.com. I'm coming to Atlanta on October 13th with Herschel Walker, Brian Westbury, Alfredo Ortiz of Job Creator Network. It's a ticketed event. If you want to see your next senator, if you want to see me, if you want to hear Brian talk about inflation that the Atlanta Fed has figured out, go get your ticket at am920theanswer.com at the Atlanta History Center, October 13th. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
But the first lie that we were told, the first lie that we know now, no one told Biden to keep troops in Afghanistan. That's what Biden said. Did you guys, by the way, hear the chants when Biden went to the congressional baseball game? I don't want to go all over the place here, but that's our commander-in-chief. He didn't get a great reception. But no one told Biden to keep the troops in Afghanistan. That's huge, right? That's absolutely huge. Biden completely lied about it. The guy's a habitual liar. The first lie the senators exposed was Biden telling ABC News George Stephanopoulos back in August that no one advised him to keep 2,500 American troops in Afghanistan. And we know now every single one of them did, from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, regardless of how you feel about them and how I feel about them. Milley, the same is true with U.S. Central Command Commander General Frank McKenzie. So they all admitted that they had agreed with the recommendation to keep at least that many troops, and that they were heard by Biden and basically ignored by Biden. McKenzie admitted, I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and that he was confident Biden heard all of his recommendations. So the question is, did Biden forget? Did Biden just ignore? You know, sometimes I go back and forth. I'm like, okay, with this guy Biden in the White House, how is he completely off of his rocker? Is he just unable or incapable of remembering anything past a couple hours or so?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Joe Biden doesn't even try to get a 51% consensus. He said yesterday, I came in and there were 4 million, that's all. He knows there were 17 million people vaccinated. He just lied because he knew that the media wouldn't say it. And then people like you and I, Eric, and our listeners today probably think, well, how can he's non compos mentis. He doesn't even finish sentences. He won't answer questions. He doesn't try to build a consensus. He just says, pay your fair share and the tax. We're not getting enough taxes, when he welched out on $500,000 of taxes, we're told. And yet the left would say, we don't care. If maybe this is liberated. You say that he's non compos mentis. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
See, that's the question.
That's their attitude.
Do you think we'll be able to do anything about it? That's the first question.
I think if we get the vocabulary and we understand without being shrill, and we just say, listen, these are not Democrats, they're not progressives, these are hardcore socialist Marxists. And I know there's a lot of naive that follow them that may not be, but when you rename the country from 1776, basically its founding brand, to 1619, or you tear down statues, or you cancel people out, you're Jacobins and Bolsheviks. And you've got to say that to them. And then when you have racism to fight racism, or discrimination to fight discrimination, then you're a racist. Let's be honest about it. And we don't use that terminology. We don't say these are Jacobin Bolsheviks, and they're racist. and they want to destroy a country.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
This most amazing discoveries thought to be written in the Wall Street Journal.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. There is a Wall Street Journal editorial this morning by Congressman Ken Calvert that you need to read. I just tweeted it out. You can follow me on Twitter at Hugh Hewitt. Abandoning Bagram may have cost 13 lives. The Taliban got to Bagram and they released the most dangerous Al-Qaeda and Taliban and ISIS fighters. There were 5,000 of them. One of them turned out to have been the suicide bomber at Abbey Gate at Karzai International Airport that killed 13 American Marines, a sailor and soldier. On August 15th, the Taliban reportedly released between 5,000 and 7,000 inmates from Bagram. According to press reports, senior Indian intelligence sources think Abdul Rahman, former prisoner, was the ISIS terrorist who carried out the attack on Kabul airport on August 26th. That just goes to the incredible malfeasance, the incredible malpractice or recklessness with which Joe Biden cut and ran in Afghanistan, leaving behind chaos at Bagram, Americans stranded. It's obviously clear, by the way, they've been lying to us about how many Americans were left behind. Now that I think more than 200 American citizens have escaped from Afghanistan after we rolled up the carpet on the last plane. So when they were saying around 100, they were intentionally lying to you. Everything they say about Afghanistan is a lie. You just have to know that. The Supreme Court returns today. Today is the first day of the new term. Abortion is on the agenda. So is religious liberty. So is affirmative action. So is free speech. That's why we need the Alliance Defending Freedom fully funded. That's why I raised money for them in October. ADF. Alliance Defends at Twitter, but ADF is the most effective legal defense fund for originalists and religious liberty people and free speech people, and you need to support it. It's almost part of your tithe because they protect every church in America, every congregation in America, regardless of denomination. They are there protecting the right to worship. They will stop churches from being treated as second-class citizens as they did during the COVID shutdown. They will protect teachers like Tanner Cross, who appeared before the school district and they attempted to punish him. ADF signed him up, went there for free. Here's a Fox report on Tanner Cross.
And he has now officially been reinstated at that Leesburg school where he teaches. The Alliance Defending Freedom tells Fox News this is a huge victory for both freedom of speech and religious liberty.
Teachers do have constitutional rights. No teacher, no parent, no citizen should be punished by the government for exercising that freedom.
The ADF tells us this case might go all the way to the Supreme Court to protect educators.
Alliance Defending Freedom has been around for a quarter century. They've gotten stronger every year. I'm always honored to speak to their Blackstone Fellows annually or almost annually for the last dozen years. I lead their media roundtable when they gather with their 3,300 partner lawyers because I can speak lawyer for the media. And I translate and I keep it moving along, and it does great work with the influencers of the country's opinion climate. Mostly, though, ADF represents people who need lawyers, good lawyers, in their efforts to protect their religious liberty. I cannot ask you often enough or emphatically enough, please think about where in your budget you can spend $50, $100, or $50,000, whatever. This group makes law because they are listened to by 5 or 6 of the members of the Supreme Court on almost every case. Their briefs are routinely cited. They are usually arguing first chair in religious liberty cases, meaning that they've taken that case through the district court, through the appeals court, up to the Supreme Court, whether they appealed for cert or they're responding to the grant of cert to someone they beat at the circuit level. They defended Masterpiece Cake Shop. They defended Barronelle. They defend Tanner Cross. They do it all. ADF defends young evangelists on college campuses. They defend everyone's right to be left alone in the worship of God as they understand it. That is the heart of the Free Exercise Clause. Alliance Defending Freedom does it. Please go over to HughHewitt.com. Wait for it to load at the top. Or you can also call in a donation to ADF at 866-359-9644. That's 866-359-9644. I think it's easier to go to HughHewitt.com and simply hit the Alliance Defending Freedom, Defend Freedom banner at the very top. It loads after count 1, count 2, then it's there. Please be as generous as you can. ADF needs you, and we need ADF. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
So who wins when there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups? Who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you'd have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Streaming on Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Y lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up with hope, which is even worse than being poor.
We would have sandwiches with no meat.
My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now.
Powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Not our enemy. Really? Because China thinks America is her enemy? Why would you say that? And why do you think it's your duty to be communist China's man inside the Pentagon? Let's put that all to one side. Your love of bigoted propaganda like critical race theory created by Derek Hall, Biden's mentor at Harvard, which states, the textbooks state, if you are white, you are racist. You may not know it, but you're racist, which itself is a statement of bigotry.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I want to get your reaction. 1-800-520-1234. Dr. Fauci on Face the Nation yesterday with Margaret Brennan, cut number 16.
But we can gather for Christmas, or it's just too soon to tell?
You know, Margaret, it's just too soon to tell.
It's not too soon to tell. We are going to gather for Christmas. I am fully vaccinated and with a booster. My children are fully vaccinated. My grandchildren are too young to be vaccinated. We're going to gather for Christmas. We're going to gather for Thanksgiving. Dr. Fauci, I had a long conversation with last week. It was not confrontational, though he was irritated with me, and I hope he comes back. I just raised the question, as I just did on Twitter. I think his usefulness is at an end. I don't think people listen to him anymore. Do you? 1-800-520-1234. One clip of that interview has now been played 630,000 times where I say, look, is it time to go? That's the kind of question Margaret Brennan should have asked yesterday. Picking up on, because that's the kind of question that, look, Dr. Fauci is approved of by 2/3 of the American public as of 2 months ago. 68% approval. That's very high. But a public health official needs 100%, 95%. Maybe you'll never get 5%. But talking about it's too early to say, that's just nuts. The correct answer is, Margaret, the American people are a free people and they will make their minds up for themselves. Obviously, there is risk for some and there is no risk for others. And for those for whom there is no risk, of course they can gather at Christmas. But for those for whom there is risk, there ought to be a great deal of caution and conversation. And maybe they ought to get vaccinated if they want to do Christmas. Do you understand? It just is not. It's not about, I'm a big vaccine proponent. Everyone who listens to this show knows it. I got the booster the first day I was eligible. I just believe in effective public health presentation. If we have another crisis right now, he will not be effective. He's burned through his credibility. It's like the news business. When you burn through it, you cannot get it back. That's why Dan Rather got bumped from CBS. I can't get it back. When you burn through it, you cannot get it back. Now, some people, like MSNBC, CNN, to a certain extent, Fox, my show, everyone, their credibility is anchored in the center-right, center-left, or way right, way left. I'm a center-right guy. And so their credibility doesn't need to be complete. It needs to be 70%, 80%. And I'm credible even among lefties. They don't like it, but I'm credible. The problem with Dr. Fauci is people just turn the channel. You're listening right now, so you haven't turned the channel. If you're in Atlanta, by the way, October 13th, I'm telling you, as many of you as possible, come on out. We'll be talking about everything, but especially inflation. By then, we will have a clear picture of what the Democrats are going to do. Brian Westbury will talk about what it means for your pocketbook. Herschel Walker is coming out. Maybe first time for you to come and meet the Atlanta, at the Atlanta event, the Georgia Great. He is back and running for Senate. So I've never met Herschel either. I've only seen him on TV. So I look forward to that. He'll be in person at the Atlanta History Center on October 13th. Tickets, it's a ticket event, are available at AM 920 The Answer. Victor in Seattle, Washington. Good morning, Victor. What do you think?
Hi, Hugh. Well, first of all, I don't think people are taking him seriously at all anymore. I think they're going to eventually make a chia pet out of him.
No, they're not. I mean, he's going to retire and be honored, etc., but he needs to retire.
He absolutely does. Hey, Hugh, I'm actually, as a request, is there any way you could replay that interview, the portion you did? I kind of came in late, being out in Seattle. I woke up late, and I heard it about midway. It was really compelling. I wonder if you could possibly play it again.
Well, we might. It's available on YouTube, but I would need a producer to play it again. And, I operate without a producer, but I did get it posted over at HughHewitt.com. It's also at The Interview with Hugh Hewitt, my podcast. So if you Google The Interview with Hugh Hewitt, it'll bring up the last 5 podcasts. I think it's 2 ago. So that's the easiest way, Victor. Randy in Knoxville, Tennessee, 1-800-520-1234. Randy, I have a friend named Schroeder who's moving to Knoxville. Give him a wide berth.
Absolutely, as long as he's not a butler man.
No, well, he is a butler man. That's the sad part. He's a butler man, and he's got 9 fingers, and he'll ask you to help in his woodworking, and it's a dangerous business.
Hey, absolutely. I'll take your advice on that. Hey, I liked your interview with Dr. Fauci. When I turned it on, I was actually really surprised, Hugh. I'm glad that you finally saw the light, had your come to Jesus moment, because as you term it, the noble lie that he told all of us, that was it for me right there. He didn't answer you when you were questioning him about it. He just said, things have evolved, we learned things. He stepped forward and admitted that he lied to all of us, whether he thinks it's noble or not. Then when some bureaucrat tells knowing lies to us, it's time for him to hit the road, and I appreciate your view on it.
Well, I'll tell you, I learned for sure, I confirmed the conversations in the White House, that Dr. Fauci was concerned about a mask shortage for doctors and nurses, and so he told everyone you don't need masks. I believe that is a central, you never lie, you can avoid a question. You never lie. You can be ambiguous. You never lie because you can't get a credibility back after you lie. You can make a mistake. You can say we don't need masks and then later say I was wrong. We did need masks. And people won't suffer your credibility. But once you knowingly lie, you never get the credibility you've lost back. And look, the list of I was a big Fauci supporter. I've always had my difficulties with him, but I have. I think they haven't done the research on ivermectin. They haven't done the research on children masks. They paused the J&J vaccine, which was stupid, and I said so at the time. Now they've screwed up the booster rollout. It's a mess. And most of all, people think I've been easy on Dr. Fauci for years. No, the first time he came on, I asked him about the testing screw-up. If you look at my half-dozen interviews with Dr. Fauci, every tough question he's got in the last year and a half has come from me. Every one. That's my job. I'm not a jerk about it. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You just need to be patient in your questions. Hey, Randy. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, again, man, I appreciate it. The thing is, not only the lie, but the way I look at it, he's got blood on his hands. Him telling that lie got people killed. Don't you agree? I
don't know, because some people might not have worn masks who did get the disease and died. I think masks would have been more prevalent in nursing homes. They didn't think they were doctors and nurses. I think the whole thing was screwed up from the beginning because if you remember, in January of 2020, I was sounding the bell. Even in December of 2019, I was telling everyone this is bad. The public health authorities in Orange County, California, where I was in January of 2020, would not announce where the first COVID patient in California landed, when they landed, where they went. And I was ballistic. because the key thing is to avoid people with a virus that's transmissible with asymptomatic. And every public health authority was busy covering their rear end. And they never got their credibility back. That's why I think they ought to change it all. Hey, Randy, thank you. I got to play Christie on ABC yesterday. He talked very candidly about Joe Biden, who ran as a moderate, what's happened to him. Cut number 1.
Well, look, it doesn't matter. When, I had a political science professor in college who told me when your adversary is in the midst of committing suicide, there's no reason to commit murder. The result is the same. And that's what's happening with Democrats right now. It's the death of 2020 Joe Biden. When he went to the Hill, 2020 Joe Biden is now officially dead and buried. The guy who ran against the progressives, ran against Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, ran to be a uniter in this country, ran saying he was going to force compromise. And he went up to Capitol Hill and he capitulated to the progressives, the liberals in his party. And why should we be surprised? He couldn't stand up to the Taliban. How could we expect him to stand up to AOC?
Okay, so look, Donna, that's a partisan take, to be sure.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Now, hold on a second. Did he stand up to the Taliban? Why is that partisan?
He wasn't.
He hasn't stood up to anyone except for the people in his own party who nominated him.
Now, I think John Carl is a fine anchor. I'm looking forward to reading his book. But unless you're willing to say that's a partisan comment, Donna, and he didn't, when Donna Brazile went on her partisan rant, I am a partisan. Christie is a partisan. Donna Brazile is a partisan. I think Rick Klein at ABC News, who was also on the panel, is a partisan. I think the Politico reporter who was there is a partisan. I can't remember her name. There are partisans everywhere. Everybody is a partisan. What's that?
Rachel Bade.
Rachel Bade, yeah. She was on the panel. She's a partisan. Politico is the most left-leaning. The Politico Daybreak, or whatever they call that thing, has become completely left-wing. I mean, not the birthdays. They always put the birthdays in, and that's fine. And, it's a little gossip sheet for D.C. That's not political. But the stories they cover are partisan. Everybody is a partisan. Everybody. It's just a question of whether they're honest with you as to their partisanship. When you read these stories, like Adam Liptak has a story about Chief Justice Roberts and the Supreme Court. It's the most partisan take on the Supreme Court ever. I know the Chief Justice. I know 3 of the justices. I know what's going to happen up there. They will do the cases case by case in a way consistent with the Constitution, and there are 9 separate ways of interpreting the Constitution. There is no preordained result. Nobody knows what's going to happen. They don't act as partisans when they go to the court. They're about the least partisan group in America. But Tony Fauci is a partisan. Why the Supreme Court is treated like partisans and Dr. Fauci isn't, I do not know, but that's the truth. Also, Christie went back to the testimony of this week. Good for him. Cut number 2.
Listen, I agree with Donna on this one. I mean, I think, their job is to go up there and tell the truth. And they did. And that should be without regard to politics. Yeah. Here's my problem. Why didn't the president? I mean, why wouldn't the president have said to George, you know what? I got a whole bunch of different opinions. But in the end, the people elected me to make these decisions. I'm the commander-in-chief, and I'm taking it. Instead, he didn't do that. He said, no, I didn't get any other contrary advice. Wanted to make it seem like, and this is Joe Biden's pattern, right? Over the course of his entire career, he's a little bit loose with the facts, and he always wants to make himself look better. And maybe when you're in the Senate, it matters less. But when you're the president, and you sit there and say there was no opposition, and then these guys come out and say it does what Rick said. It erodes public trust in what he says. The president should have just said, there were different opinions. I disagreed with this general or that general. My choice, I'm the commander-in-chief, my call, and I own it. He got close, but he had to just make himself seem a little bit better, and it's costing him.
Christie is a very, very shrewd observer of politics. Governor of New Jersey for 8 years. Stephen is calling from New Jersey. Good morning, Steve.
How are you?
Good.
So, what is amazing is Fauci has not lost his credibility, but it seems like he's part of this whole generation of bureaucrats and non-elected officials that don't resign either over a policy difference or when they've screwed up. Milley and it's like, we're fine because we're on the left. Nobody's going to hold us accountable, so we can just keep coasting here.
Well, I don't think General Milley is a partisan, but I think Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins have lost their credibility, and they're also a lot older than the average age of the American workforce, and I believe it's time to give way. Thank you, Steve. I want to remind everyone that ReliefFactor.com is a great sponsor of this show. I took my Relief Factor early in the show. There's my bag of ReliefFactor.com. I keep it close by in studios on East Coast and West Coast. Wherever I go, I take it with me. I took it with me to Charleston. I'll tell you why. ReliefFactor.com works. And if you're out wandering around and walking hills and dales, Charleston is a tough city to walk around in. But Fort Sumter is particularly uneven. And, it gets to your back occasionally. I'm telling you, ReliefFactor.com will help you. If you're commuting this morning, put it in your car. Don't forget it. Just put a bag in your car. You will never forget it. It works. I had breakfast and lunch. It was lunch last week with the founder of ReliefFactor.com. And the good doctor tells me he's just in this to make as many people as possible feel better. Give it a try. $19.95 3-week starter pack. ReliefFactor.com. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Women are born ignorant of male sexual nature. It's not their fault. We're so different from women. There's no fault here. But it is the fault of a society that doesn't teach them that. And society always did. But not since the 60s. Because they wanted to believe men and women are basically the same. So I'm curious, are you a religious home?
Yes, we are religious.
Right. So here's my theory. Religious Americans are less naive than secular Americans.
I like that theory.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens are captives, we deserve the full story. We should demand that the media give it to us. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those considering a career in politics.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble.
This most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I
salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I came back from Charleston to a raft of postcards from the penultimate week for you Steeler fans. That means second to last week of the Wild Adventure, twa.us. And it filled up early last year, so I'm just telling you about it early this year. If you're a spouse and you want to send your husband or your son to the Wild Adventure, 5 great days in Montana, fly fishing with a group of guys that are wonderful, great food, great fellowship, great fly fishing, wonderful. You can't beat the vista. You got to go to twa.us now because it fills up and it sells out every year. And so Jan asked me and sponsored a few of these reminders because some people never get in. It's sort of like my trying to get into Fine Arts 10 at Harvard 50 years ago. I never could get in. I always signed up. I never get in. TWA.US handled almost 300 men. They have a young guns track and an older guys track. I think you have to be under 35 to go to the young guns track. Some of the postcards. Camp was awesome. What a great week with incredible fellows. We had some impactful convos. That's from Josh Brandy's. My friend is mentoring a good friend in North Carolina. Great week at TWA. Amazing to hear 12 guys tell their life story. Fishing was great. Caught the biggest trout of my life multiple times. Yeah. I heard all. I fished that river out. The Madison is without trout after I was there. Thank you very much for pushing TWA and allowing me to have this experience with those friends and those I've not met before. A unique experience with a backdrop that could not have been painted more perfectly. Absolutely true. Last one for today. I wasn't sure, Hugh, what I was getting into when I signed up for TWA. After being here for 5 days now, I've experienced something I never thought I would do, fly fishing, and open up to some great men about everything in my life. Thank you for a liberating experience. That's Edarsh. Look, you'll love it. Dwayne loved it. I loved it. Go to twa.us if you're a spouse. It's a great Christmas present, but you got to get there early. And if you sign your husband up, they'll go and they'll have a great time. Let me also, I just was talking with our friend in Seattle, didn't hear I can't replay the entire Tony Fauci interview. Here is the thing that made the most news over the weekend. I've lost confidence in the CDC and the FDA. And I actually believe a lot of Americans, a significant part of America, now have lost confidence in you, Dr. Fauci. Is there a point where you will say, I do more harm than good because people don't listen to me anymore, and step aside?
No, absolutely unequivocally no, Hugh. Sorry. I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that you've been saying. You come from a different perspective than I do. But I think the thing that gets lost in the discussion and that people need to understand, and I do know that some people don't understand it and don't accept it, even if they, smart people who evaluate it in their own context, is that we have been dealing with an evolving situation. And I just get back to what I've said before, and I totally understand and respect your differences, Hugh, that when you have an evolving situation and data are rapidly evolving in something that's unprecedented and unknown, you have to evolve with it and look at the data as it exists now and make, to the best of your ability, a decision, a recommendation, all the kinds of things that go into the evolution. And things have changed. We didn't know things early on. I always get asked the question. It's a very common question. What would you have done back then if you knew what you know now? The question answers itself. If I knew then what I know now, the circumstances would have been different.
What I should have said after that, but of course in an interview you don't, but since it got so much play, I should have said, Doctor, the evolving data had nothing to do with the noble lie about the masks. The evolving data had nothing to do with screwing up the tests. The noble data had nothing to do with not starting studies on ivermectin. The changing data had nothing to do with not beginning studies on children in masks, which in the United Kingdom they have banned. The changing data had nothing to do with pausing J&J. The changing data had nothing to do with allowing an inappropriate use of equity value in the conversation that the advisory panels at CDC and FDA had on whether or not they have boosters available to those under 65. Changing data doesn't account for most of the controversial decisions and credibility gaps at the FDA and CDC. It's not about changing data. It's about candor. And I'm afraid you cannot get back what you have squandered. But I didn't make an impact on Dr. Fauci. Here's what he told Margaret Brennan yesterday, cut number 16.
But we can gather for Christmas, or it's just too soon to tell?
You know, Margaret, it's just too soon to tell.
No, it's not too soon to tell. People are going to gather for Christmas. If they got vaccinated twice and they got a booster, I'm going wherever I want because I'm just as likely to get hit by a train than I am by dying of COVID. I might get COVID. You know, my sister-in-law just got it. She was double vaccinated, mild case. That's what happens after you're vaccinated. You got the antibodies. It's not going to kill you. Here's the deal. People are rational and people are free. At least in this country they are. We're not going to seal them up in their Wuhan apartments by soldering the doors. Get the vaccine, get going, America. Live your life like you did with the NFL yesterday, where the Cleveland Browns went to 3-1 for the second year in a row for only the first time since the mid-'90s. Go Baker, go Miles, go to the next hour of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Women are born ignorant of male sexual nature. It's not their fault. We're so different from women. There's no fault here. But it is the fault of a society that doesn't teach them that. And society always did. But not since the 60s. Because they wanted to believe men and women are basically the same. So I'm curious, are you a religious home?
Yes, we are religious.
Right. So here's my theory. Religious Americans are less naive than secular Americans.
I like that theory.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens or captives, we deserve the full story. We should demand that the media give it to us. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those considering a career in politics.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Instantaneous, momentary pleasure is a value the left understands that keeps their entire coalition together. And Fauci understood this. Fauci understood the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. He understood the narrative that you do not cross that line. Now, we see this happen all the time, but we don't always talk about it. We don't always, those of us that are conservatives and actually love the country, we don't actually analyze the place that certain activist groups and ideas have over the other. Who gets the final say when there's a clash, when there's a conflict, when there's a collision? Another example would be, so the other side cares deeply about the Me Too movement unless it threatens Joe Biden becoming president. So Me Too matters a lot unless it gets in the way of controlling the White House. Power, the control of the federal government, then matters more than some sort of virtuous, righteous campaign to listen and to believe all women. Currently, there is an epic clash that the media is totally ignoring. Now, they are covering it here and there, but there is a clash between two of the favorite teams that have been created, fostered, supported, and aided over the last 18 months. You have on one side Team BLM. BLM Incorporated, racial justice, skin color matters. Now, as all of you know, after last summer of Floydapalooza, that group gets whatever they want.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
But the first lie that we were told, the first lie that we know now, no one told Biden to keep troops in Afghanistan. That's what Biden said. Did you guys, by the way, hear the chants when Biden went to the congressional baseball game? I don't want to go all over the place here, but that's our commander-in-chief. He didn't get a great reception. But no one told Biden to keep the troops in Afghanistan. That's huge, right? That's absolutely huge. Biden completely lied about it. The guy's a habitual liar. The first lie the senators exposed was Biden telling ABC News' George Stephanopoulos back in August that no one advised him to keep 2,500 American troops in Afghanistan. And we know now every single one of them did, from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, regardless of how you feel about them and how I feel about them. Milley, the same is true with U.S. Central Command Commander General Frank McKenzie. So they all admitted that they had agreed with the recommendation to keep at least that many troops, and that they were heard by Biden and basically ignored by Biden. McKenzie admitted, I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and that he was confident Biden heard all of his recommendations. So the question is, did Biden forget? Did Biden just ignore? You know, sometimes I go back and forth. I'm like, okay, with this guy Biden in the White House, how is he completely off of his rocker? Is he just unable or incapable of remembering anything past a couple hours or so?
Keep up with what's trending. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
They seem to have come unmoored.
We're not alone. We have history to guide us, and it has been a trademark across time and space that the left feels that the means that you talked about are justified by their more noble ends, nobility defined as radical equality of result. And so they feel that what you call lying, the Russian collusion hoax, or Joe Biden, that son Hunter's laptop is Russian disinformation, or Anthony Fauci saying I had no role in the gain-of-function research subsidies. All of that is okay because the ultimate end, that is making sure that the, quote, people are equal or that they're fair, it justifies them. And they feel that they have a right that you and I don't have as superior moral beings to use. They don't call it lying, they call it a noble lie. When Anthony Fauci says on one day, don't wear a mask, then wear a mask, then wear two masks, or it's xenophobic to have a travel ban, yes, and then maybe not, he said himself that he lied about masks so there wouldn't be a quote unquote run on mask. And they've been doing that with everything. If you said, why did James Clapper lie under oath and say this NSA does not spy on people?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, 1-800-520-1234. It's Victory Monday. It's Victory Monday. It's always Victory Monday when the Cleveland Browns and the Ohio State Buckeyes win on the preceding weekend. And that happened. That means, my boys and I joke about Browns porn. That's the endless number of articles written in Cleveland.com. The podcast available at the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. With Doug LeMarise and Mary Kay Cabot and Dan Lobby and Scott Patsko and the Book of Ellis. I love those podcasts. It also means Civilized Barking from the Athletic Cleveland. It means my Buckeyes Talk podcast is great. The College Football Playoff Show podcast. I have podcasts all week to listen to. I'm not glum and depressed. And I don't care that the Browns won ugly. Boy, did they win ugly. That was the worst I've ever seen Baker Mayfield play, and he's still pretty doggone good. He's normally pinpoint accurate. I think his shoulder hurts. I don't know what's going on, but he'll be fine next week. He's our guy. He's a great quarterback. He got more charisma than the rest of the league put together. And so the defense won yesterday. That's why we have a Joe Woods defense, Myles Garrett, and Son Jadeveon Clowney. That's why JOK is the biggest steal in 5 drafts. I mean, JOK, second round. He is like Jack Lambert. He's a killer. He is going to be a Browns centerpiece for as long as the franchise continues. I hope the rest of my Browns watching days, he could play 30 years. I don't expect to be watching the Browns at 95. I might be, but I don't expect to. But well done, Cleveland Browns. Well done, Ohio State. Ryan Day is back. By the way, can I say, if you look at that clip of Urban Meyer, it is not what it seems. Would you just, his hands are on the bar stool. The girl gets pushed back into him. People are ragging on Urban. That's just nonsense. Urban is fine. And the Jags are not fine, but he's working with a rookie quarterback and a losing team. It's going to be 3 years before he's like the Browns with Kevin Stefanski in 2 years, but with 3 years of tearing it down to the studs and rebuilding it. That's what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski inherited from John Dorsey, and before them, Sashi Brown. They did it. It's the only way to do it in the NFL. Tear it down to the studs, rebuild, get yourself a QB, and then you make yourself great. Doug LeMarise did that. How drafting a quarterback in the top 3 changes your entire franchise. You're committed. Then you do what you need to do. You fire people and you hire people. The poor Steelers. Enough of football. Let me get back to the stories of the day. New York Times. Democrats weigh cutting programs or reducing scope to trim $3.5 trillion. You think, but it's not going to matter. They're still going to spend $2.5 trillion. And when they spend $2.5 trillion, we're all going to be screwed. Because inflation, which the Wall Street Journal warns is already taken off, is going to go nuclear. Here, by the way, Cedric Richmond is on Fox News with Chris Wallace and gets fact-check in real time. Finally, somebody brings up the fact check on this. Cut number 10.
I got to stop you there. It doesn't cost zero. Whether it's $3.5 trillion or $2 trillion, or $1.5 trillion, whatever, it costs that amount of money. Now, you can pay for it either by borrowing it, or you can pay for it by raising taxes on corporations and the wealthy, but it doesn't cost zero.
At the end of the day, it will cost zero.
No, it doesn't cost zero. Whenever anyone tells you it costs zero, they're lying. I'm not opposed to anything that costs zero. They can pass resolutions every day renaming post offices. That may even cost something, but I'm not opposed to it. It's going to cost $3.5 trillion. Representative Jayapal, by the way, got out and spoke truth yesterday. I love this. Because this is a message to Joe Manchin, who calls himself a pro-life Democrat. Cut number 12.
Senator Joe Manchin said this weekend that this reconciliation bill, this is the bill that we're talking about, must include the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal dollars to go for abortions. He said, quote, yeah, we're not taking the Hyde Amendment off. Hyde's going to be on. It has to be. That's dead on arrival if it's gone. I know this is personal for you. Yeah. You shared your experience with abortion in congressional testimony this past week. Can you vote for a bill that has the Hyde Amendment in it?
No.
So what happens?
You can't.
Let's just...
No. Now, Joe Manchin said he won't vote for a bill that has it, that doesn't have it. So we have the key socialist in the Congress, in the House, and the key, quote, moderate Democrat in the Senate saying diametrically opposed things. I don't know where it's going to come out. Doesn't matter. The Supreme Court's going to strike down Roe v. Wade, and various states will then move to make it illegal to have abortions except in the case of saving a woman's life or rape and incest. And other states will constitutionalize it, like California, and it will be available, and the morning after pill will be available. It's not going to change much. It's just bad constitutional law that will be jettisoned. Congresswoman Jayapal went further, talking about how crazy her position is on the bill, cut number 13.
Anything in there that's absolutely non-negotiable must be in there for a 10-year period?
For a 10-year period? I think that the clean electricity standards really do need to be in there for a 10-year period because it takes time to cut carbon emissions, and we need to have that certainty in order for the market to move in that direction. So that, I think, is one that really does need to be there for 10 years.
And what about means testing? Are you comfortable with means testing? That's what Joe Manchin wants, meaning people who can afford it won't get these benefits.
Well, all of the research shows means testing actually doesn't target it more, but it does create a lot of administrative burden and a lot more cost.
So is that enough?
So, it's not what I want to do. I'm actually just had a staff member do a paper for me on all the reasons why means testing is not a fiscally prudent thing to do or a policy prudent thing to do.
There are some times when you don't pass the laugh test. Means testing doesn't work. Huh? Means testing doesn't work. Means testing doesn't work. Does anyone believe that? Do you realize why you're not getting Social Security right now if you're under 65? Because it's means tested. You only get it when you're over 65. Maybe she means testing on the basis of poverty line. Do you know why you're not getting basic assistance from your county right now? It's because you're making some kind of money. Do you know why you do not have a Section 7 housing voucher? Because they're means tested. Everything in this country is means tested. And if you begin to say, even Obamacare is means tested. You get various levels of Obamacare depending on how much you pay for Obamacare. Means testing means that your income matters, your age matters. What you cannot use is race or gender. Income you can use, age you can use. Okay, I want to skip over. I always tell people my son works for Congressman Michael Waltz. I always declare that so that people know when I play a Waltz clip, I'm not playing it because it got sent to me by my son. I'm playing this because Michael Waltz wrote a book called Combat Warrior Diplomat about his time in Afghanistan. He's leading the fight along with people like John Androsik and other members of Congress who are trying to get American citizens, LPRs, Afghan SIVs out of the country. He's also opposing this ridiculous bill, this $3.5 trillion bill. He went on with Judge Jeanine yesterday and said this, cut number 14, Michael Waltz.
Well, Judge, I didn't almost die for this country twice to have my children growing up in a country led by socialists or a world led by Chinese communists. But that's exactly the road that we're on right now. And what I think you're going to see play out over the next month is that they're going to go for the policies because they know if they can get these programs in place, Ronald Reagan said the fastest way to eternal life on earth is through a government program. They'll shave down the years that it's going to last. So, that free everything may end in 2025 versus 2028, and that'll allow them to take the price tag down a little bit. But they know if they get the programs in place and they can redefine the country, for example, the child tax care credit in this bill, it no longer has to be your child. So they already tripled it, and then it can just be any child that anybody's taking care of. What could go wrong with that? But at the end of the day, Judge, as you said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
That's right.
Margaret Thatcher famously said that. But that is the tragic road that we're on until we can get the House back.
But we're on a good road in Virginia. Don't forget, Virginians, early voting is open. Get out there and vote for Glenn Youngkin. Yesterday, Politico's Rachel Bade gave bad news to the ABC audience. Terry McAuliffe is falling apart. Cut number 11.
At the same time, McAuliffe is sort of showing Democrats how to run. He's definitely been distancing himself from Biden. There was a debate earlier this week where, Youngkin was going hard after Biden on everything from Afghanistan to the border. And McAuliffe didn't defend him and in fact said the $3.5 trillion reconciliation number is too big. So we're seeing that distance.
McAuliffe is increasingly look like burnt toast. Our friend Kurt Schlichter, and by the way, thanks to Mark Davis for filling in for me on Friday. Kurt Schlichter, our other often guest host, pointed out, got a picture of a McAuliffe, quote, rally yesterday, had 10 people at it. Terry McAuliffe falling as flat as Joe Biden and the Democrats, as ineffective as the Biden cut and run from Afghanistan. Stay tuned. Get out and vote for Glenn Youngkin.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Mark Milley admitted yesterday that for that pathetic pseudo-journalist Bob Woodward, for his new blockbuster dishing book of scandal, Mark Milley gave him hours of interviews. Hours? Sorry. How busy should the chairman of the Joint Chiefs be? Just curious. Is the Taliban ready to take back Afghanistan? These are interviews he gave this stinking year. This year. Is the Taliban is rising? Is China is building its military? Is Iran is threatening us? Is Russia is being ever more militaristic? You're sitting down for hours with an avowed, rabid Democrat, quote-unquote, journalist to give inside scoops on how you stood up to President Trump by undermining the chain of command that you, by the Constitution, are not a part of? What the hell are you doing? Maybe those hours could have been spent, I don't know, reading the Long War Journal by our friend Bill Roggio, where he predicted in March that the Taliban would be in control and Kabul would fall. Maybe you would better spend your time reading books like Cynical Theories, reading the works of Chris Rufo about what critical race theory really is and why it's racism and bigotry. But oh no, you had to be a politician.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
When I started teaching, I was only 25. I was only 7 years older than my students. That's not a great span of time for between a man and a young woman, and it is a daily distraction.
That's right. It is. I thank you for your honesty. That is exactly right, and it is not his fault. He's built that way. It's no more his fault than food is a distraction to the hungry. Okay? There is no difference between the two. So I'll tell you an interesting story, really interesting. Many years ago, and I can't find this on the internet, maybe one of you can, and that would be of great help to me. I only remember that he was from a university in Indiana, but I don't remember which university. What did it say, Sean? So a professor did a study and found that one of the two groups, I don't remember the second, of men most likely to divorce were high school teachers. And I think college teachers. In other words, men around a great number of young women divorced at a greater rate than any other men.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I was just telling the fishing Mrs. Hewitt I have nothing on the calendar for today. I was wrong. I've got to read this book, The Dying Citizen, by Victor Davis Hanson. He's on tomorrow's show. How progressive elites, tribalism, and globalization are destroying the idea of America. VDH is always so upbeat. I mean, he's always, happy. I love talking to VDH. I also will love talking to you in Atlanta on October 13th. Come out and meet Herschel Walker, me, Brian Westbury, Alfredo Ortiz, as the Job Creator Network sponsors our Biden inflation seminar. And Herschel comes and talks about politics in the Peach State on October the 13th at the Atlanta History Center. It's a ticket event. You can get your ticket at AM 920, The Answer. Some of you want to know about my earlier Fauci interviews. I've done, I think, a half dozen Tony Fauci interviews. Dr. Fauci has been a regular guest on my show. I hope he keeps coming back, though I ask tough questions. He never has minded in the past. Go over to the search engine widget at HughHewitt.com, and you will be able to find Hugh Hewitt, Dr. Fauci. You can find all those interviews. You also might find there an Enemy at the Gates banner. I hope you do. Enemy at the Gates is the new Mitch Rapp thriller. It's out there. If you don't want to read Victor Davis Hanson, The Dying Citizen, you want to read a thriller because you're going on vacation late this year, then get Enemy at the Gates. Mitch Rapp is back, and he's as good as ever. And Kyle was on with me, Kyle Mills, who now writes the Vince Flynn series for the benefit of readers everywhere, the Flynn family and thriller lovers. Enemy at the Gates is out there. It's terrific, absolutely terrific. Also want to remind people before I do the market update, Alliance Defending Freedom. It's the first Monday in October. That means the Supreme Court is back in business at the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett is there, first full term. Abortion is on the docket. Free speech is on the docket. Religious freedom is on the docket. That means Alliance Defending Freedom will be in front of the court. They'll be first chair. They need your support. They defend their clients for free, including Tanner Cross, about whose case Fox News said this.
And he has now officially been reinstated at that Leesburg school where he teaches. The Alliance Defending Freedom tells Fox News this is a huge victory for both freedom of speech and religious liberty.
Teachers do have constitutional rights. No teacher, no parent, no citizen should be punished by the government for exercising that freedom.
The ADF tells us this case might go all the way to the Supreme Court to protect educators.
I remember 25 years ago when very few people were paying attention to Alan Sears when he and a band of brothers and sisters got together and said, we're going to protect religious liberty in America. We're going to fight for the unborn. We're going to protect churches. And they started the Alliance Defending Freedom. Alliance Defends on Twitter. Now it depends upon the donations of hundreds of thousands of Americans. And they need you. They do need you. Whether it's $10 or $100, and maybe you can afford $1,000 or more. Don't set up a new legal defense fund. Don't try and fight for people on your own. Ask the ADF to come in if a teacher's in trouble for being a Christian. Ask the ADF to come in if a church isn't being allowed to build when they have the permits because they don't generate tax revenue. Ask the ADF to defend the student who's been silenced on a college campus, and they will. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com, let it load. There'll be a banner at the top. Please be generous, or call 866-359-9644. First day of the Supreme Court's new term is a great day to make your annual contribution to Alliance Defending Freedom. Let me check the market on Friday. The Dow is up, 482 points. The S&P was up, 48 points. NASDAQ up 118 points. Looks like the Chinese holding company, the bad real estate firm, is going to get bought out by another fake company in Hong Kong. And they'll just continue to pump money into it because President Xi doesn't want to be embarrassed before he takes over China completely. So interest rates are going up. And this is why you need to call AndrewandTodd.com that sponsored that market report. The 10-year Treasury was at 1.19 about a month ago, is at 1.1465 this morning. Now that still is among the lowest rates ever. You'll still get a 30-year mortgage in the twos. Maybe if you've got terrible credit or you're doing a jumbo in the low threes, but it's still the cheapest you'll ever buy a house for. Help your kids get into a house. Help them by becoming a non-occupying co-borrower. Go to andrewandtodd.com. Answer a couple of questions. They'll call you back or call 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Andrew and Todd with Sierra Pacific, great sponsors of the show. They will get you the loan you need. 888-888-1172.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I'm gonna get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Look around. You are witnessing a shameful part of history that is unfolding in the United States of America. We've got a president who was caught in a bald-faced lie about withdrawing from Afghanistan. We've got a general announcing to the world that we have utterly and completely failed. We have a general on record announcing to the world that we are guilty of a major failure.
It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure.
General Milley admitting that he was leaking and giving intel to book authors about Donald Trump. This is a guy who so far has had zero accountability. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has had zero accountability. Let's go back to what he said to George Stephanopoulos a few weeks ago, and then we'll take you to the present and yesterday's explosive, dramatic testimony by military commanders over the shameful, unethical, unforgivable lies coming out of the Biden administration and Joe Biden himself. Here he was with George Stephanopoulos a month ago on ABC.
Your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops.
No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy, not any different than a hierarchy that you would have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else. I wrote a piece for humanevents.com where I wrote, it was literally called, "This Matters More Than That." Now, a great example of this is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships. When he was even confronted by a talk show host where they asked Fauci, they said, so do you think that young people should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having very promiscuous relationships? And Fauci said, well, you have to understand there's some risk to that. He didn't denounce it because he understood that if he came out against promiscuous behavior for young people, there'd be a revolution.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Those powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. America is America. And so when Amazon.com announces that Christmas shopping is upon us, it's Christmas shopping. Believe it or not, now I own Amazon stock, so I always declare that before I give you an Amazon story. But this is over at USA Today. I saw it during the break. Amazon has declared Black Friday-worthy deals earlier than ever, kicking off holiday shopping. I'm reading from USA Today right now. Amazon is rolling out Black Friday-worthy deals earlier than ever. The online giant announced today that holiday savings are now available at Amazon.com/epic deals. On the mobile app by asking Alexa, what are my deals? Deep discounts across all categories, fashion, home, beauty, toys, electronics, and its own devices. Now, I'm used to Halloween beginning on the first day of September. I get that. There's some product producers who can only sell in September and October because they're Halloween dependent, sort of like the Minnesota State Fair is a 3-week run. And if you don't hit those 14 days, you're out of luck if you don't get a French fry sold at the fair. So there are windows. But I have never seen Black Friday deals advertised on October 4th. And that's just crazy. Not as crazy, though, as this story, which I told you about in hour one. I got to go back. Ran for our lives. How the deadliest ultramarathon claimed 21 runners. Now, this is a tragedy. It is also a movie. It's going to get made. A brutal cold front and a poorly organized event, I'd say so, in China, what a surprise, left participants begging for rescue and freezing to death on the trail. Huddling with a group of shivering runners on a naked rocky slope at 6,000 feet, Zhao Linting had to decide, up, down, or stay. Piercing winds and rain had swept across the Yellow River Stone Forest Ultramarathon in northwest China that May afternoon, catching runners by surprise. Confused and frightened, some had already turned back. Others, including her friend Wen Zhang, a newly married accountant, were pressing uphill towards the next checkpoint. The rest were waiting for a rescue that race staff told them would come in an hour, maybe two. Over the rest of the afternoon, the 60-mile mountain trail would become one of the deadliest sights in modern sports history. In all, 21 of 172 runners who started the race would die as a sudden cold front from Mongolia drove temperatures to as low as 23 degrees Fahrenheit, with snow pellets and wind gusts strong enough to tear apart foil blankets. The scale of the tragedy has confounded the international running community for months. A review of findings from the official investigation, satellite data, and interviews with survivors and family members of victims reveals a poorly organized event, race officials who were slow to act or communicate even when the danger was clear. Confusion reigned among ill-prepared competitors. Some didn't realize the danger they were in. Others scrambled for their lives with little or no help from organizers when the squall swept in. Even as death mounted and runners begged for help, organizers never officially called off the race. Many runners hid in gorges. Some searched for goat herders' caves for shelters. Others wandered off the trail and were found dead later from hypothermia. Data from GPS trackers displayed confused final paths. Sports watches worn by some of them show their heartbeats faded for hours after runners called for help. It gets worse. You got to read the whole thing. It's truly, I never have understood ultramarathons. I've run a dozen marathons in my own life, and I hated them when it rained. All right, so I wasn't in bad shape, but I hated them when they rained. Running through the border of China and outer Mongolia in an ultramarathon of 50 miles doesn't seem like a good idea to me, but to each their own. Not the race organizers not being prepared for a cold front when you're next to outer Mongolia, that I don't understand. Now, in the United States, all of your bases belong to us. The liability lawyers would be all over. This is the Chinese Communist Party, though. Good luck. And I'm grateful for American standards. I have a son, who was going to run the Lake Tahoe Triathlon a few years ago. And that's a 1.5 mile swim in Lake Tahoe, which is freezing. That's a marathon at mountain distance, and it's a 120-mile bike. I don't know what it is. I went up and got up early to do the thing with him, and 5 minutes before the race, they called it off. Why? Because it's the United States of America, and there's liability for this stuff if you screw up. And there had been massive forest fires, and so the race organizers watched and watched and watched, and a valley of smoke had settled over the race course. So if they ran that race, up at the lake it was fine, but if they ran that race, 3,000 runners were going to run through dense smoke. That's not good for you. People die. And so the Russians got very angry and they were screaming.
That's a missed branding opportunity. They could have called it the Marlboro Marathon.
They could have called it the Marlboro. Can you imagine? So my son's in the middle. He just shrugged and walked away. He's stoic. The Russians were screaming at the race organizers, and the Australians went off to drink, which I think is pretty much, the American is, no, okay, another day. The Russians are screaming because they got out of their country once in 15 years. Putin let them go. And the Aussies say, well, this is a good reason to drink. Nevertheless, they called the race off, unlike this Chinese ultramarathon. Let that be a lesson to you. Let it also be a lesson to you that right now, in America, religious liberty is under siege. I want you to call me in California and tell me what you think about Gavin Newsom's mandate. 1-800-520-1234. I actually don't know how this is playing. Generalissimo is married to a school teacher, and he tells me it's not playing well. Here is Gavin Newsom announcing vaccine mandates for all students on CNN with Anna Cabrera.
This is a big announcement. Why is this the right move right now?
Yeah, I think we're all just exhausted by this. We want to get this pandemic behind us. And while we've made great progress, California, 84% of Californians that are eligible received at least one dose. We have the lowest case rate in America. It's not good enough. And we have a cohort 12 to 17 right now where only 63.5% of our kids have received at least one dose of vaccine. And we think this will accelerate our efforts to get this pandemic behind us.
Now, I believe in mandates for teachers. I believe in mandates for soldiers. I believe in mandates for government workers. I do not believe in mandates for students because we don't know whether or not parents have religious objections or not. We don't want to make them lie. We don't know about the enlarged heart syndrome. We do not have data on 12 to 17-year-olds yet. That is, I believe there is some data. They believe it's safe. I don't believe it's sufficient enough to force people. And indeed, I don't believe it's anything like measles or chicken pox because the mortality is so low among children. I do not believe this is a good idea. What do you think? Trent in Los Angeles. Good morning, Trent. 1-800-520-1234. What do you think, Trent?
I do not think it's a good idea to mandate all vaccines for children. They are not at risk like adults are, especially older ones who are overweight and unhealthy. And it just puts everybody in a bad situation. It makes getting back to school worse. And it's just not going to help the healing in California. Governor Newsom's acting like a little Lord dictator. He should not do this and back off and let us get back to normal in California.
I agree with you on this. I think this is a terrible idea. Now, I am a big mask in places that ask you to mask. I believe that the private sector gets to set their own rules. If you're going to get on a cruise ship and they want you to mask, I'm all for that. I went to a concert for John Androzek at the Birchmere last week. They asked for a vaccination card. The Birchmere belongs to the Birchmere. They get to do that. I happen to have my vaccination card with a booster on it. Happy to go in. Private sector people get to do what the private sector wants. The government can require the people that work for it to do what they want. The government cannot require free people to do what they don't want to do. Now, one thing this is going to do, it's going to accelerate homeschooling dramatically. There is, by the way, a homeschooling curriculum over at hillsdale.edu, and I recommend it to you. And if you find that you have a religious objection and the school district doesn't honor it, I want you to go to Alliance Defending Freedom, go to their website, they will defend you. In the meantime, you should contribute to Alliance Defending Freedom over at HughHewitt.com. Len in Anaheim, California, 1-800-520-1234. Len, what do you think of the governor's mandate in California?
Hey, Hugh, long time listener, first time caller. You're awesome. I think he's nuts. I mean, I got 11 kids. We just finished 35 years of homeschooling. My wife is off because she won't take the jab, but for good reasons, health reasons. But it's universal, one spot size fits all. Here it makes no sense. I got to put it, Newsomini, he just keeps on keeping on. He didn't landslide. You know that. In Riverside County, he lost, and in Orange County, he was dead even. But, kids are very precious. They're going to last 40, 50, maybe 80 years if we don't do something to them that is adverse. And theirs is getting longer and longer. 36,000, what is it, deaths from it when you look at the unraw data. And you did a great job on Fauci, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Len, let me ask you something. You did 35 years of homeschooling?
Yes, sir.
Are your hands trembling?
No, actually, I love it. I'm a real estate broker. Keep working. I'm empty nesting with 5 at home. And,
well, yeah, that's some empty nest. So
I don't think you understand how empty nesting works.
Yeah, that usually means kicking them out. Did you have a failure to launch, or are they in college?
Well, we have 14 college degrees so far. 38 down to my last one. We just graduated this summer at 18. So it's been a joy. Homeschooling is a choice. It's not a crime. It's a lifestyle. A lot of
I know. I love homeschoolers. I have often spoken to their groups. The Alliance Defending Freedom, by the way, defends them all the time. It's led by the former head of the Homeschooling Alliance, Mike Ferris now. I want everyone who loves homeschooling to contribute to Alliance Defending Freedom over at HughHewitt.com. But homeschooling is a lifestyle choice, and you made that choice for 35 total years. Wow.
Yep. Homeschool legal defense as well. But ADF's great. So, we are in a great country. There's a lot of blessings if we just get away from the misery merchants. You're good at that. Your interviews and everything that you're doing is focused in a laser light, Hugh, on all the things we need to do. It's smack dab right there in front of us. But
well, thank you. We're a freedom people. We are a freedom people, and if we emphasize freedom, we will be fine. Freedom works. Liberty works. The left wants to take it away from you. Gavin Newsom wants to take it away from you. It ought to be the choice of parents, what's in the best interest of their children, and the public schools have been paid for and bought by the taxpayers of California. Whether you choose to homeschool or not, they should not, for 12 to 17-year-olds, mandate this vaccine. I think it's fine to mandate it for teachers. Thank you, Len. More calls coming up. Let me tell you about ReliefFactor.com, great sponsor of the show. If you're homeschooling, you're probably out there doing PE with your kids, you're going to need ReliefFactor.com. They're not. They're growing. They could do sports without it. I'm not sure about ultramarathoners and marathoners trying to get through it without it. ReliefFactor.com works to combat inflammation. Doesn't always work, not 100% successful. Most people I know love ReliefFactor.com. I do. I've gone farther than I ever have before in the last 2 years with ReliefFactor.com, with the shutdown. What else is there to do but walk and trundle and run? So I do it every day, and I urge you, not because they sponsor the show, that's part of it, but because I use it. Every product that I ever pitch, I actually use. I take it every day in the first hour. I remind you in hours 2 and 3. Don't leave home without your Relief Factor. Josh Kraushaar is next. Hotline Josh. We find out how deep the divisions are and whether or not Glenn Youngkin can close strong in Virginia. I think so. Get out there and vote for Glenn Youngkin. Stay tuned.
His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Thousands of people watching this hearing today that are looking at you all and saying, I can't believe they're sitting there and not answering the questions and are trying to punt. I yell back.
Punt. The polite word for it. God bless Marsha Blackburn. You are the 3 people who may have broken the American military. That was yesterday during the Senate hearing with the CENTCOM commander, with the Secretary of Defense, and with the most senior military officer in the United States, Mark Milley.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Women are born ignorant of male sexual nature. It's not their fault. We're so different from women. There's no fault here. But it is the fault of a society that doesn't teach them that. And society always did. But not since the 60s. Because they wanted to believe men and women are basically the same. So I'm curious, are you a religious home?
Yes, we are religious.
Right. So here's my theory. Religious Americans are less naive than secular Americans.
I like that theory. I concur because we speak of evil.
That's right.
And we speak of wrongdoing. Yes.
Exactly right. You're a joy. People teaching your kids.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I tell you, I'm about to talk to Josh Kraushaar, Hotline Josh on Twitter, but I am a little frustrated because I just got a note. You said, I hear you on ADF. I'm going to give it to Mike Gallagher. Mike is so sad. I am the offensive line for Mike Gallagher. I am their Joel Bitonio. I am his Wyatt Teller. I am his J.C. Treader, his Jack Conklin, his Jed Wills. I am the blocking line for Mike Gallagher. I clear the way for him every day. and then you folks go and give the ADF contribution via Mike Gallagher's website, and I do all the work. So I think it's only fair that on this, the first day of the Supreme Court term, you go over to HughHewitt.com and contribute to Alliance Defending Freedom. I'm joined now by Josh Kraushaar. Josh, I have a theory. The only way to stop the Democrats from spending $2 trillion, $3 trillion, $4 trillion is for Terry McAuliffe to get beat by 10 points. What do you think of my theory that the Virginia governor's race matters and how Congress decides these massive tax hikes and spending bills?
Well, look, Hugh, the timeline, the political timeline that was punted because of the President Biden and Pelosi over the last week, it's October 31st. They want to get this deadline for the reconciliation and the infrastructure bills. I think that's very optimistic. If it even goes a few days late, you got that Virginia governor's race. And if McAuliffe loses and the polls are extremely close in Virginia, I mean, that would sap any momentum. A Democratic loss in Virginia would sap any momentum to getting anything done. And as it stands now, having Terry McAuliffe is very aggravated that Democrats didn't have a deal last week because the perception of Democrats divided, not getting what they promised done, and the left wing of the party. Virginia's a moderate state. It's a Democratic state these days, but it's a moderate state. And the notion that you have AOC, the squad, Pramila Jayapal holding the whip hand in the party against the moderates is not a good look. It's not what Terry McAuliffe wants in the closing week of the Virginia race.
Kurt Schlichter posted a picture of Terry McAuliffe, I think it was at Spotsylvania Courthouse, doing a Get Out the Vote rally. It was sad. I mean, he was doing his dancing thing. Terry likes to wear gray pants and a blue button-down like I do, but I never dance because older guys should never dance, and Terry McAuliffe is Joe Biden's body double politically and physically. So he's up there dancing, and there were like 10 people there. I don't think there's any enthusiasm in Virginia for Terry McAuliffe. Do you detect that gap?
You know, it's hard to say. Virginia, the early voting is very low, and Democrats are the party that usually utilizes early voting. That we've only had, I live in Virginia. We've only had it for a year or two, so there's not a lot of history there. I think a bigger issue is the African American vote. That's such a key part of the Democratic base in Virginia. There's some polls that suggest that they're not as excited to show up in the governor's race. That McAuliffe ran against a very diverse Democratic field in the primary, and he won pretty handily in the primary. But there are a lot of disappointed progressives, and when African American candidates, a lot of their supporters were disillusioned at the same time. So we'll see. I think it's a little too early to declare, low turnout in this race for Democrats, but I haven't seen a whole lot of anecdotal excitement.
I do believe it is not too early to declare that Glenn Youngkin won the last debate. Did okay on the first debate. It was a tie, basically. He crushed it in the second debate, and I believe he's got energy. I know I went to early voting, and at the early voting thing, I happened to run into Mrs. Youngkin. She was out there working the site. There were lots of volunteers. I've seen Youngkin signs everywhere. Do you see Youngkin signs since you're a Virginian like me?
Yeah, I mean, look, I never believe yard signs are the indicator of success, but I live in a pretty Democratic area in Northern Virginia, and there are more Youngkin signs than Terry McAuliffe signs, just as an anecdote. So I didn't see any Trump signs, by the way, in 2020. So
I agree.
There is that anecdote that you do see some of the Romney voters coming home to Youngkin in a governor's race. You're seeing some anecdotal evidence of that here in Northern Virginia. But I think that you mentioned the debate, Hugh. I think one of the biggest closing elements of the debate is the issue of education.
Yep.
The one mistake McAuliffe made was he said he didn't think parents should, I'm paraphrasing, but basically in response to these controversies in schools said that parents should be the front line of their kids' education. They should trust school boards and teachers. And that has been all over the air in advertisements from the Youngkin campaign. Education is a sleeper issue here in Virginia. There are a lot of people angry about the state of the schools, the curriculum, the school closures over the last year. And I think he may have tapped into an issue that's really rallying a lot of parents in Northern Virginia and suburban areas across the state.
There are a lot of animals that are sneaky out there, like the land shark, like the hippopotamus, like the crocodile. They come up and they get you. And that issue came up and swallowed Terry McAuliffe whole. Everybody is angry at educators. I mean, everybody across the United States. And when he said parents should not have input into school districts, I thought to myself, game, set, match. Terry McAuliffe just took a size 14 loafer and swallowed it whole. Josh, tell me very quickly, when do you expect the debate among the Democrats to be over?
It's not going to be over. I mean, this is an issue that was papered over in 2020 because of Trump. I mean, the one thing they agreed on was the dislike, hatred of Trump. But moderates, Josh Gottheimer and Pramila Jayapal, do not agree on a whole lot of issues. And now that the stakes are so high, you're seeing those disputes come to the forefront. This is going to be the story of the next year, going into the next presidential election. The Democratic divisions are deepening, they're getting worse, and the stakes are higher because they have control right now of government. So this is just the beginning. This is the appetizer of what's to come politically.
This is the reverse negative of the House Republicans with the Freedom Caucus versus Paul Ryan. And it's better to be in the minority when one party in the majority falls apart. Josh Kraushaar, Hotline Josh on Twitter. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Adam. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.